It found me at 2 a.m., the way all terrible things seem to do in the dead of night. I was scrolling, just numbly flicking my thumb upwards, letting the algorithm feed me dopamine hits of dancing teenagers and dogs doing funny things. My brain was a placid lake of exhaustion. Then the video started and the lake froze over. The title was simple, almost clickbait: How I Escaped My Abuser and Found Happiness. The man on screen was Lachlan. My Lachlan, but he wasn't my Lachlan. Not the one who'd kissed me goodbye that morning, smelling of coffee and the expensive cologne I bought him for Christmas. This Lachlan was different. His face, usually set in a handsome, confident arrangement, was artfully crumpled into a mask of remembered pain. His eyes, which I knew could go from warm to icy in a heartbeat, were glistening with unshed tears. He looked vulnerable. It was a look I had never, not once, seen directed at me. He started to speak, his voice a low, gravelly murmur that was probably intended to sound intimate, broken. "I don't talk about this a lot," he began, a perfect, calculated pause. "But I know there are people out there, men and women, who are in the same position I was. And I just want you to know you're not alone." My thumb hovered over the screen, paralyzed. My heart was doing a frantic, clumsy tap dance against my ribs. He talked about his ex-wife. He never used her name, just her. He spoke of a woman who was a master of manipulation, who isolated him from his friends, who controlled their finances down to the last penny, who would fly into rages over nothing and then, hours later, act as if nothing had happened. He described her gaslighting, how she made him question his own sanity, his own memories. He even hinted at physical abuse, a vague, shadowy reference to being pushed around and things being thrown. The hardest part, he said, his voice cracking on cue, was that to the outside world she was perfect. Everyone loved her, and I started to believe it. I started to believe that I was the problem. Then the pivot, his expression softened, a watery smile gracing his lips. "And then I met someone," he said, looking directly into the camera, and for a terrifying second I felt like he was looking right at me, through the phone, through the darkness of our bedroom. "I met my soulmate, Brielle. She showed me what real love was, what support felt like, and with her strength I finally found the courage to leave, and now I'm happy. Truly happy." The video ended with a shot of him smiling, a single, heroic tear rolling down his cheek. Below, the comments were a tidal wave of support. "You're so brave, a true king. My ex was just like that. Thank you for sharing your story." The video had 1.2 million likes. I dropped my phone onto the duvet as if it had burned me. The sound was swallowed by the silence of the room. Next to me, the real Lachlan, my husband, breathed the deep, even breaths of untroubled sleep. The man in the video was a stranger, a performer playing a role for an audience of millions. But the story he told, it was a key. A key that fit a lock I never knew existed, opening a door into a room inside my own home, a room that was pitch black and freezing cold. I picked up the phone and played it again, and then again, the chilling words echoing in the quiet darkness, each repetition making the stranger on the screen look more and more like the man sleeping beside me. That video wasn't a stone dropped into the placid lake of my mind, it was a depth charge. The explosion sent shivers backwards in time, cracking the frozen surface of my own memories. I lay there in the dark, the phone's glow illuminating my wide, unblinking eyes, and I started to walk back through the corridors of our marriage, but this time the lights were all flickering. I thought about the little things, the incidents I'd brushed off, explained away, or buried under the weight of my desire for our marriage to be perfect. Lachlan's words about his ex became a ghostly narrator for my own life. She isolated him from his friends. I remembered the time my best friend Anya had come over for wine. Lachlan had been charming at first, then slowly, subtly, he'd steered the conversation towards Anya's recent messy breakup, picking at her insecurities with surgical precision until she left in tears. Afterwards, he'd wrapped his arms around me. "I'm sorry, honey," he'd sighed. "I just don't think she's a very good influence on you. She's so chaotic." I'd agreed with him. I'd stopped calling Anya as much after that. One by one, my friends had drifted away, repelled by a force I couldn't name but now saw had a face. His face. She controlled the finances. A few months after we got married, Lachlan suggested we merge our bank accounts to simplify things. It seemed romantic, a symbol of our union. But soon every purchase became a conversation. "Another dress, Brie. You just bought one last month. Did you really need to get the expensive organic coffee?" I'd started feeling a prickle of shame every time I used our shared card, a feeling he'd soothed by saying, "I'm just trying to be responsible for our future, baby. We're a team." I wasn't a teammate, I was an employee on a tightly controlled budget. She made him question his own sanity. This was the coldest, sharpest shard of memory. The arguments that erupted out of nowhere. I'd bring up something that bothered me, the way he'd belittled me in front of his parents, for instance. By the end of the conversation, an hour later, I would be the one apologizing. I could never follow the labyrinthine path of his logic, how he'd twist my words, reframe my feelings, until I was convinced I had overreacted, that I was too sensitive, that I'd remembered it all wrong. You're always so emotional, Brielle, he'd say, his tone dripping with a pained sort of patience. It's exhausting. And I'd believed him, the physical part, my God. I squeezed my eyes shut, but the images were there. The time I'd woken up with a massive, purple bruise on my thigh. You must have bumped into the coffee table, Lachlan had said, examining it with a detached concern. You were pretty drunk last night. I didn't remember being that drunk. Or the time my favorite ceramic mug, a gift from my late grandmother, was shattered on the floor after a fight. Your hands were shaking so much you just dropped it, he'd explained calmly while I sobbed amidst the pieces. See, this is what I mean, you get yourself so worked up. Every memory was a piece of evidence that had been presented to me with a false interpretation. Now, in the stark light of his TikTok confession, I was rereading the tags. He wasn't describing an ex-wife, he was describing his own playbook. He was road testing his narrative in public, polishing it, perfecting the story he would one day tell about me. The fear was no longer a creeping vine. It was a suffocating forest, and I was lost in the middle of it, with the monster sleeping peacefully just feet away. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum from the refrigerator sounded like a judgment. I was suffocating in the silence, drowning in my own head. The isolation Lachlan had so carefully constructed was complete. I had no one. Anya wouldn't believe me. My family thought he was the most charming man they'd ever met. So I did the only thing a person in the 21st century can do when they are utterly, terrifyingly alone. I turned to strangers on the internet. I found a subreddit, one of those support forums for people in toxic relationships. My fingers trembled so badly I kept misspelling words. I titled the post, I think my husband is using his abusive ex story to abuse me. Am I crazy? In a torrent of frantic, disjointed sentences, I poured it all out. The video. The way his story about his ex was a carbon copy of my own life with him. The gaslighting, the isolation, the bruises I couldn't account for. I didn't use our names. I just called him my husband and myself me. I hit post with a sickening lurch in my stomach, half expecting the FBI to smash down my door. For a few minutes, I just stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Then the first comment appeared. This is a classic abuser's tactic. It's called DARVO. Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. He's not just abusing you, he's preemptively discrediting you. Another one, get a bag packed, go now. Don't wait. But then the one I was dreading, this is fake. I saw that guy's TikTok, he seems so genuine. You're probably the crazy ex he was talking about, trying to ruin his new life. My blood ran cold. Of course, Lachlan hadn't just built a cage for me, he'd built a fortress for himself, brick by brick, with public opinion. The validation from the first few comments was a flickering candle, and this one comment was a gust of wind trying to snuff it out. I had to fight back, I had to clarify, I started typing an update. Wow, I wrote, I didn't expect so many people to see this. Thank you to everyone who has been so kind. My hands are still shaking. I need to clear a few things up because some of you are asking the right questions. To the person who thinks I'm his ex. I swear on everything I have left, I'm not. I am Brielle. I'm the soulmate he mentions at the end of the video. That's what makes this so terrifying. He's sitting in the living room right now, probably scrolling through his heroic comments while I'm hiding in the bathroom typing this. A lot of you are asking why I don't just leave. It's not that simple. He's told me for years that I'm terrible with money, so he handles everything. I get a weekly allowance transferred to my account for groceries, an allowance. I'm a 32-year-old woman. I don't even know the password to our main bank account. And about my phone and friends, he doesn't forbid me from seeing them. It's smarter than that. He'll say things like, oh, you're going out, okay, I guess I'll just eat dinner alone again. He makes me feel so guilty that I just don't go. As for my phone, he'll periodically ask for it to clear out the cache or run a security update. I know he's reading my messages, I know it. But if I ever said that, he'd just give me that sad, patient look and say I'm being paranoid. Reading your comments, it's the first time in years I feel like I'm not completely losing my mind. But I'm also more scared than I've ever been, because he's not just a monster in private, he's a hero in public. That night I barely slept. I lay rigid in bed, feigning sleep, my ears straining at every sound. The next evening was the real test. I had to sit across a dinner table from him and pretend that my entire world hadn't been shattered by a 60-second video. I had to pretend to be the loving, supportive wife he had so convincingly described to his audience of millions. He came home in a great mood, whistling as he dropped his keys into the ceramic bowl by the door. the one I'd bought to replace the one my grandmother had given me. He kissed my cheek and I had to fight every muscle in my body not to recoil. His touch felt like a spider crawling on my skin. "Smells amazing, Brie," he said, heading to the fridge to grab a beer. "Tough day." The usual, I managed, my voice sounding thin and reedy to my own ears. I was stirring a pot of pasta sauce, focusing on the rhythmic motion, the simple, physical task keeping me anchored to reality. We sat down at the dining table. The silence between us, once a comfortable space, was now a chasm teeming with unspoken horrors. I could feel him watching me over the rim of his glass. "So funny thing happened today," he began, his tone casual, almost offhand. My stomach plummeted. "That stupid video I made, it's kind of blowing up." I forced a look of mild surprise. "Oh really, the one about you know?" I couldn't bring myself to say the words. "Yeah," he chuckled, shaking his head as if in disbelief. "It's crazy. I've got all these messages from people saying I'm brave, saying I've helped them. It's humbling, honestly." He took a long sip of his beer, his eyes fixed on my face, searching. He was testing me, he was watching to see if the mask had slipped, if I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to see. This was my stage, this was my performance, I had to be perfect. "Well, you are brave, Lachlan," I said, meeting his gaze. I channeled every ounce of acting ability I didn't know I possessed. "What you went through, it was horrible. I'm glad you're sharing your story, you probably are helping a lot of people." A wave of relief washed over his features, so subtle it would have been invisible to me just 2 days ago. But now I saw it, I saw the slight relaxation of his shoulders, the way the tension in his jaw eased. He had believed me, my performance had been convincing. "Thanks, baby," he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. His skin was warm, but all I could feel was a deep cellular cold. "It just means a lot to know you support me. You're my rock, you know that." The rest of the dinner was a masterclass in his art. He talked about his plans to maybe do a follow-up video, answering some of the questions people had. He was workshopping ideas, using me as his sounding board. "Do you think I should talk more about the financial abuse, or is that too much?" he asked, completely oblivious to the irony that was so thick I could have choked on it. I just nodded and smiled, offering bland, supportive suggestions. I was a witness to my own character assassination being planned in real time. I was watching the architect draft the blueprints for my prison, and he was asking me if I liked the color of the walls. Every word of agreement I uttered felt like a betrayal of myself, but it was a necessary one. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was a spy in enemy territory, gathering intelligence, playing a part, and waiting for the right moment to defect. The next 2 days were a blur of feigned normalcy and frantic secret planning. I was living a double life in the confines of my own home. In one life, I was Brielle, the doting wife, listening to Lachlan's plans for his burgeoning career as an online trauma guru. In the other, I was a desperate prisoner, using the 10-minute windows when he was in the shower to frantically search the internet on my phone's private browsing mode. I found websites for domestic violence shelters. I read about making a go bag, about digital safety, about how to get a restraining order. The information was a lifeline, but it also made the danger feel more real, more official. This wasn't just a bad marriage. It was a recognized pattern of behavior with a name and a set of protocols for escape. The turning point came not from a website, but from a private message on Reddit. After my update, a user with a simple, anonymous name had reached out. Her profile showed she was active in social work subreddits. Her message wasn't emotional, it was calm, professional, and it chilled me to the bone. It began, "I'm a licensed clinical social worker specializing in intimate partner violence. I want you to know that what you're describing is not just toxic. The public video is a highly sophisticated form of psychological abuse known as coercive control. He's not just controlling you. He's controlling the narrative around you. If you ever leave, he has already established a public record that paints you as the unstable party. He has an army of strangers who are ready to defend him and attack you. This is incredibly dangerous." She laid it all out. She explained how my confusion, my self-doubt, my isolation, they weren't my failings. They were his accomplishments. She ended the message with a simple, powerful sentence. "You are not crazy. You are being methodically dismantled. Please make a plan." That was it, and that was the final push. The validation from a professional, someone who saw his tactics not as a personal drama but as a clinical case study, cut through the last vestiges of my doubt. I wasn't overreacting. I was in a cage and the door was slowly being welded shut. My planning kicked into high gear. I used the grocery money Lachlan gave me to buy a cheap burner phone and a prepaid debit card. I started smuggling my essential documents, my birth certificate, my passport, my social security card, out of the house, hiding them in a sanitary pad box in the bottom of my gym bag. I called Anya, I just sobbed into the phone at first. I'm so sorry, I cried over and over. She didn't ask for details, she just said, "What do you need, Bree? Just tell me what you need." Her voice, a voice I hadn't realized how much I'd missed, was the first real warmth I'd felt in years. I knew I owed the strangers who had helped me an ending. They deserved to know what their support had enabled. I logged back into Reddit one last time, my heart pounding with a mixture of terror and a strange, fierce hope. "This is it," I wrote. "This is my last post here. I don't know how to thank you all. The DMS, the advice, the people who just said, 'I believe you,' you have no idea what that meant to me. You were a light in a very, very dark place." A social worker reached out and basically gave my situation a name, and that changed everything. She made me see this for what it is. I'm not leaving a marriage. I'm escaping a hostage situation that I didn't even realize I was in. I've spent the last 2 days making a plan. My best friend, the one he drove away, is going to pick me up tomorrow while he's at work. I have a burner phone, I have my documents, I'm leaving everything else behind. The house, the furniture, the life I thought I had. It's all just part of the set he built. It's not real. I'm terrified. I know he's going to use his online platform against me. I'm probably going to be harassed. His flying monkeys will come for me. But for the first time in a very long time, I feel like I'm breathing my own air. The cost of this is going to be immense. I'm walking away from my whole life. But the cost of staying, that's a price I'm no longer willing to pay. Thank you for giving me the courage to see that. Wish me luck. Anya's car was waiting at the corner exactly as we'd planned. I didn't look back at the house. I couldn't. I just walked, one foot in front of the other, clutching my gym bag to my chest like a shield. The weight of it containing my entire identity, a burner phone, and $300 in cash was both terrifying and exhilarating. The moment I slid into the passenger seat and she pulled away from the curb, a sob escaped my lips. It wasn't a sob of sadness, but of pure, unadulterated relief. The air in the car, smelling of her familiar perfume and stale coffee, was the sweetest air I had ever breathed. I'm staying with her now in her tiny spare room that's cluttered with boxes and old art projects. It feels like a palace. For the first week, I did nothing but sleep and cry. I told Anya everything, the whole sordid, twisted story. She just listened, holding my hand, her face a mixture of fury and heartbreak. "I knew there was something wrong," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry I didn't push harder, but I knew it wasn't her fault. Lachlan was a master illusionist." The price of my freedom became clear very quickly. I had to block Lachlan's number after he left me 74 voicemails in a single day, alternating between furious threats and pathetic, weeping pleas for me to come home. Then his followers found me. My old social media accounts, which I'd forgotten to deactivate, were flooded with vile messages. They called me a gold digger, a liar, a monster. They were his army, and he had pointed them right at me. I deleted everything. I effectively erased my own digital existence. Tonight, out of a morbid, self-destructive curiosity, I used my burner phone to look him up. He'd posted a new video. He was sitting in our living room, the lighting soft and tragic. His eyes were red-rimmed. He looked broken. "I have some difficult news," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "As many of you know, my wife Brielle is the light of my life. She's a survivor herself, and I think the trauma of her past was just too much for her." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "She's left, she's gone, I don't know where she is, she just disappeared." He looked directly into the camera, his eyes pleading. "Brielle, baby, if you see this, please come home, I'm not mad. I love you, we can get through this together. I'll be right here waiting for you always." The video had over 3 million views. The comments section was a memorial to our dead marriage and a witch hunt for me. "She abandoned this poor man after everything he's been through. This is what happens when you try to save a broken person. Praying for you, Lachlan. Stay strong." I switched off the phone and tossed it onto the bed. The room was dark and quiet, the only sound my own breathing. He'd done it. He had completed his masterpiece. He had taken my escape and twisted it into the final, perfect act of his tragedy, casting himself as the noble, heartbroken victim and me as the unstable, cruel woman who had abandoned him in his time of need. I was free, but he had ensured I would be paying for that freedom for a long, long time. I was safe in this little room, but the ghost of his narrative would follow me. He had taken my past and rewritten it, and now he had taken my future and poisoned it. I had escaped the cage, but the world now believed I was the monster he'd described. That was the cost, the chilling, unbearable cost of my survival.